Welcome to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker, and that's John on your left, 70th District, and in between, of course, is Dan Hawkins, the House Majority Leader from Wichita, the 100th District, and this is the last legislative updates for the year because now you guys have had a long session, and you've just finished up this week, and so bring us up to date. John, you want to start?
Okay, well, we went back Monday. Thinking that we may have to redraw a congressional map. The Supreme Court approved it, so we went back for 1 day to include sine die, which is the last date. So the legislature is over for the year. We've had a few overrides that Dan will talk about in a little bit. I was going to bring up one other issue. Had a couple of constituents that brought up a question to me, and asked me, said, did we spend $4 billion more money this year than we did last year? And I said, well, I don't know exactly it was $4 billion, but it was quite a bit of money. It was one-time money that came from the federal government. And at the beginning of the session, the Speaker had a meeting with the caucus, and we talked about what we should do with this money. And I had suggested, a number of others suggested, we should do what we do in our household. We get extra money, what do? We pay off debt. And that's what we did. We put $1.2 billion into capers. When Dan and I came to the legislature in 2013, the capers was the third worst retirement system in the nation. California and Illinois were ahead of us. We've really worked to improve that. So we put this $1.2 billion in. It brought it up to being funded at 80%, which is almost like being fully funded. And we saved about $82 million a year in interest because we have to pay whatever the assumed interest was, and it was 7.75. Then we said, well, we have a little extra money here. We put $700 million into paying off some bonds that the state had. One of them was $75 million that we bonded when we built the Kansas Bureau of Investigation's laboratory on Washburn University's campus. So we paid those off. Then we have about $1.3 million in ending balance.
Billion.
$1.3 billion in ending balance. And we also had to put more money into education because of the Gannon decision. We put a little over $6 billion into education, public education. So if you're looking at bottom lines from last year to this year, we did spend more money because we had more money. It was one-time money. Rather than create new programs that would grow every year, we decided to pay off debt from past years. So yes, we did spend more money, but we have $1.3 billion in our balance. We also put $750 million into the rainy day fund. The rainy day fund is a fund we created a couple of years ago. Didn't have any money in it, but we wanted to have that in case the state, we have a recession and the state revenues will go down.
It's like a savings account.
Like a savings account. We put $500 million on the first appropriations bill of the year, and then when we brought the omnibus bill, which is our last appropriations bill, we had some additional funds, and we put $250 million in it then. So a total of $750 million into the rainy day fund because we all think we may get into a recession, Doug. And
we also paid the layering payments off.
We did pay the layering payments off, and I'm not sure, that was several $100 million.
Yeah, 700, I think.
700 million. So we spent probably around $4 billion, but we paid off debt with that money. So I think that's the appropriate way to handle that. You get one-time money. Go ahead, Dan.
I would say, the governor, Doug, likes to say that she likes to take credit for things, but she also likes to say that the legislature spent more money than what I asked for. Literally, we did, but we did it. Each one of those payments that John's talking about, paying off debt, it's all in the expense column. Even though we're taking care of debt, and paying off debt, it's still in the expense column. Putting that money in the rainy day fund is in the expense column because we're taking it out of the state general fund and putting it in a different fund. So when they say that we spent $4 billion, extra. That's not true. We actually took care of the debts and put away money for the future.
And that's what families do. When you get additional money, you want to pay off your debt, but you don't have those credit card fees and those interest fees. And we're probably going to save 150, maybe $200 million a year just at interest that would go for the next 20 or 30 years.
I remember over the years that we've been doing this, when you guys first started in the legislature and John would come in, and at the very beginning, the Capers Fund was the one that was, lots of questions were asked about it, because people who were in the retirement programs would say, will there be any money when we get to that point? And as John gave the first figures with us, wow, this is this isn't nearly funded.
Well,
so it's good to see that that's getting to that point now, because when you were giving the figures, it's like, well, I've got money, but if we postpone it, we're going to be paying this much in in millions of dollars for interest on it, and so that seems logical.
It is, because the Teachers Capers Fund was 56% in 2013. And we have now got it up all across the board where it's at 80%. And that's considered, now we have one of the best retirement systems in the nation.
That's good. We're going to cut away, take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker. And in between, of course, is Dan Hawkins from the 100th District out of Wichita, House Majority Leader. And I always throw that in there, that you can be the Speaker of the House and on, but I'm only kidding you when I do that. I know the title.
Titles.
Yeah, I have many titles, and rightfully so. Well, John, you were talking about, and Dan, you were talking about that money that came in. Where did that, was it like $4.9 billion that came in?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, back during the pandemic, the federal government had several programs where they were trying to assist states in the pandemic to buy supplies and such. And we did give a lot of that money out to counties, who then disseminated it out to the cities, because they had additional duties and testing for COVID-19 and all those things. But what was interesting, we spent more money, but we cut taxes. We did not raise taxes this year. We actually cut property taxes. The state has a 20 mil across the board, across the state, levy for education. And for years it's been the first $20,000 was exempt from taxes. This year we doubled that exemption to $40,000. So the first $40,000 of your assessed value does not get taxed. We also, is one of the things I've talked in a previous show that I really like, and my wife really likes, because she's a former school teacher, is that if you're a teacher and you've got some students that just can't buy supplies, and you can't get the money from the administration, they go out and buy it anyway. But now they can take a $250 tax deduction on their state income taxes for that. And I think those art teachers and different types of teachers will all benefit from that.
We also, another thing we had when it comes to taxes, there was actually a lot of tax bills passed this year, all of them having to do with either what John's talking about or COVID related. One of the big ones, and we just passed it there at the very end, the last day on Monday, was we were going to have some tax relief for those businesses, those Main Street businesses that were shut down during COVID. So if you were shut down during COVID, there's some tax relief there for you. That's part of that whole tax package. So we also did, of course, the sales tax. We cut sales tax starting January of this next year on food.
Right.
That's going to come down to 4% next year. So we did a lot more than what people think. Actually, we had one tax package that had 29 pieces in it. And so people are truly going to feel a difference in what's going to happen with their taxes this next year. So it all goes along with, with the fact that we wanted not only to be able to pay down debt with that money, put money in a rainy day fund, but have some targeted tax relief that would help our folks here in Kansas. So we did that.
On the businesses that were closed, we put $57 million into that.
Right.
So if you were closed, because of the pandemic or the governor said you were not essential, then you could go in and ask for a rebate on that.
And oh, by the way, whenever you cut taxes, that's an expenditure too.
Yeah.
Because that's an amount coming out of the state general fund that won't be there. So when they talk about this $4 billion, when the governor says it or somebody out there in the public says the Republicans spent $4 billion more than last year, all of that targeted tax relief is part of that too. Do they not want that? I think they want it. So it was a good deal. We actually got a lot of good work done. We also, as you know, Monday we had a couple of vetoes that the governor had done while we were away. One of them was a veto on the bill that stopped her from being able to close down church services. Right. And also in that bill was also a piece where she can't go out for put a request for a proposal out for the Medicaid system until after the first year. So the new governor will do that. She had vetoed that. We overrode that veto. Both the House and Senate overrode that veto. And then we had another veto that she did on elections. She had done some things during this last few years where some of her liberal organizations that wanted to do certain things in the way of election. She actually did some consent decrees where they took us to court, and she basically did a consent decree that allowed them to continue doing what they were doing. So she had vetoed the bill that we were stopping her with that. We overrode that veto, so she can't just go out there and do that now.
Yeah, and that was a bill that I conferenced on.
Yeah, that came through your committee.
Came through my committee.
Yeah, John actually, Representative Barker's committee, Fed and State, actually did quite a few of our election bills this year. So those came through his committee, and it's, of course, his job to get those out. And I think we probably passed, what was it, three different election bills?
I did.
So we had a really good year when it come to working on elections. There's some things we wanted to do we couldn't get the votes for. But for the most part, I think the main things that we needed to do when it came to election integrity, we got done.
Yeah, and we've several other things. We gave tax relief. We did not raise taxes. We gave tax relief, targeted tax relief. We did spend the money that the federal government gave us, but we paid off debt with that money, and that's prudent to do. Because we don't know what the future is going to look like. I mean, we could go into a really bad. I was thinking this morning. I used to pay $1.97 just a few years ago for gas. I pulled up to get gas and it was $4.19, and now they say it's going to be $5. And that just, that's where inflation starts. And so hopefully we've saved enough that we will not have to raise taxes. We will have enough in our rainy day fund.
Appreciate it. All right, we're going to cut away, take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker. That's John from the 70th District on the left of your screen. And in between is Dan Hawkins from the 100th District out of Wichita. And this will be the last Legislative Updates for this year. And boy, it's been feels like it's been a long one.
Special session.
Oh, is that possible?
Oh, the governor could always call one.
Okay.
We don't expect that to happen.
All right. Listen, I had read something in the paper. I'm not sure that I understood all what it was, but about the Apex. What is that?
So I can't tell you what that acronym stands for. It's government has acronyms, but Apex is a bill that we passed back towards the first of session. And if you remember correctly, back then it was all about this company that was going to come to Kansas, was going to spend $4 billion in building a huge factory. We couldn't know anything about it, and anybody that did hear about it had to sign non-disclosure agreements. So what was interesting, we went through, the Senate passed that bill pretty quick. The House really slowed it down and analyzed it. And what we found was that the original proposal would have really cost us a lot more money than what we needed to. And so we slowed that thing down. And actually, when it was finished up, we were putting in about $1.2 billion worth of incentives for a company that's going to spend at least $4 billion in capital and headquarter themselves in Kansas.
And employ 400 people.
And 4,000 people. Employ 4,000 people, and then they were also going to have about 4,000 people in other companies that served them. So it would have been about 8,000 employees here in Kansas. So that particular company also was looking at Oklahoma. Specifically, they say it was Pryor, Oklahoma, a big industrial complex down at Pryor is where they were looking at also locating. And so we were in a hurry. They kept saying we had to get it done, and so we did. After about 3 weeks or so of us really analyzing it and figure out what we were going to do, we did get the bill passed. Then Oklahoma come in, and it took them their whole session to get a bill passed, and they came in somewhere around $700 million in their incentives. What's interesting is from what I hear, that company is growing and growing and growing, and they actually may build plants here in Kansas and Oklahoma. They're so big. So we don't know yet. We thought that we would have heard by the end of March who was going to get the plant. We do think it'll probably come here pretty soon, that we'll hear if we're gonna get the plants or not. But what came out of that? Kansas has not had a lot of incentives to bring companies to Kansas, and the one thing Kansans need, and they need it desperately, is to grow. Our taxes, we're kind of a high tax state, and the reason why is because our population is dwindling. People are leaving. Kids go to college and then they leave and they go to other states. So as our population goes down, it means that we still have a lot of the same services, and you have to pay for those services somehow. So how do we get out of that cycle? We get out of that cycle by growing our economy, growing our business base, getting more jobs here, bringing people here for good, high-paying jobs. And since we passed that Apex bill, even though we don't know anything about this company, this large company that might come to Kansas, by passing that bill, the Department of Commerce has said that they've had around 12 different inquiries for large companies that have seen that package and said, something, we may want to look at coming to Kansas. Mm-hmm. And so it could be a huge tool for our economic development as we go forward, and that's what we hope, because we really have to grow our base. When you talk about paying taxes, everybody out there that is paying taxes is paying a certain amount, but if we grow that base, then those taxes can go down. So economic development has become a huge issue, as well as making sure that our people are well trained and are ready to go to work for those type of companies. So job training is also a huge piece of what we need to do to make sure our companies can have the folks to be able to do those jobs. I think I saw just recently, maybe this week, that our unemployment rate is like 2.6 or so percent now.
Pretty low.
Yeah, so really we're at full employment right now. So how are we going to provide the people to fill all these jobs? Every single employer in this state is screaming to get employees. They just don't have enough employees. And so how do we do that? We do it through our economic development work and our job training work. So we're getting there. We're making some moves in the legislature that should help the state out long term.
Exactly right. And the Oklahoma, it did take them all session.
It did
to come up. They were trying to get a better bid or proposition than we did. But it's not for this one company.
No,
it's for any company that wants to come into Kansas and create jobs and have their headquarters here. So I think it's an opportunity. I think I said at an earlier show when we were talking about this in the early session, was this could be the best vote or the worst vote
yes,
that
absolutely.
I make this session. But I've decided it's the best vote because there's 12 other companies. If we don't get this company, maybe 12 other companies will move in.
Yeah, that's tremendous, and you're right. That would, I know I've heard already that, of course, the population in Kansas, especially from where we are here to the to the Colorado line that the numbers are just dropping, and the
Right.
people that are available is just fewer and fewer. And so this would make a huge difference. People would look at the state and say this is a good spot to come in because of employment, good salaries, etc. We're going to cut away, take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker. That's John from the 70th District. He's on the left side of your screen. In between is Dan Hawkins from the 100th District out of Wichita. And this will be the last legislative updates we'll be doing for this legislative season.
Right.
And thank you guys so much for coming in, because I know it's a load. You get to the point of you worked at the legislature all day. Not so this week, but what you have been doing, and then you come in on the weekend. So you come in on Friday afternoon. We shoot the program, try to get the word out as quickly as we can, straight from the legislature to the people who want to view it.
Yep.
And this, of course, will be on screen. The contact information for each of you will be on screen. And thank you so much for taking time to come out and share this information.
Well, thank you, Doug, for hosting us.
Well, appreciate that. Thank you. Hope you've enjoyed Legislative Updates. See you next time.